Hi BookTube, my name is Carrie and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a cumulative book haul that is going to feature all of the books that I've accumulated over the first half of 2022. There's a lot of books to go over today, so let's just jump right in. So to start off, I'm going to go over some adult literary fiction, the first of which is Ghost Forest by Pick Shun Fung. Can we just take a moment because that cover is gorgeous. I love the detail that they put into it. This follows an unnamed narrator who is grieving the loss of her father and starts to reconnect with her mother and grandmother to kind of better understand who her father was. Next is Celestial Bodies by Joka Al-Harti. This is translated from the Arabic by Marilyn Booth, and this was actually the first Arabic-speaking author to win the International Man Booker Prize in 2019. And this is a book that I've heard very polarizing things about. But I think that might be because this sounds like it's more of a character study, which is something I usually prefer in literary fiction. This is the story of three women in Oman who are kind of negotiating their wishes, hopes, desires with the very real circumstances of their life and the roles that they are expected to take on in their families and communities. And I actually found this book while looking for a book for the 2021 Reading Women Challenge, which I'm actually doing this year because I didn't complete it last year. But this is one that I'm hoping to read for the prompt of Arab author in translation. Next, I have Journey by Moonlight by Antal Zerb. This is translated from the Hungarian by Lynn Rix. And I don't know a ton about this except that it's about a newlywed couple that's on their honeymoon and it goes disastrously wrong. Then I have This Green and Pleasant Land by Aisha Malik. This is the story of a man named Bilal who at the beginning of this story, his mother is dying and her dying wish is that Bilal builds a mosque in their relatively small town. And Bilal decides that he is going to fulfill his mother's dying wish and he starts building this mosque, and it unravels a lot of the tensions that have been building in this community. It's just kind of this really close examination of small town dynamics and how tensions kind of build in these areas and societal expectations. And this is one that I've actually been wanting to read for a long time, but it took a while to release in the US. And then I'm going to insert a picture of this US cover because why did they do that? I actually ordered this one from Book Depository because I was like, I cannot have that US cover. It fills me with sadness. This is so much more beautiful. Look at the little like gold detailing. Lovely, simplistic cover. Next, I have two nonfiction essay collections. First, I have They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us by Hanif Abdurraqib. This is a collection of essays that is examining pop culture and specifically looking at culture that surrounds music and how music shapes kind of generations in a sense. And the other book in this group is All About Love by Bell Hooks. This is an essay collection where Bell Hooks explores the question of what is love. I've heard amazing things about this. I've only read a couple other of Bell Hooks' works that had more to do with feminism, so I'm interested to see how this somewhat new topic will be explored in her writing. Next, I have some romance books. The first is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. This is the first book in the Mead Mishaps romance series. I believe that this is actually a self-published romance series, so go off queen. This was actually sent to me as a birthday gift from my friend Laura from Bookstagram. I will of course link her and also anyone else that I mentioned in this video down below. But yeah, she sent me this as a birthday gift back in March because I had been mentioning that I wanted to read more romance, but I took forever to decide on what romance I wanted to pick up. And she had read this one, really enjoyed it. She said that she thought I would enjoy it as well. And I'm really excited because I've heard really good things about this book. Next, I have Dating Dr. Dill by Nisha Sharma. This is, I believe, an arranged marriage trope where our main character, Karina, is trying to save her mother's house. Her father wants to sell it and he agrees that if she gets married within a certain number of months, she can keep the house. And she enlists the help of this celebrity doctor named Prem, and Prem loses funding for this community health clinic that he wanted to start. Karina agrees to enter into this arranged marriage so that she will provide funding for the clinic and he will help her keep her mother's house. And romance or spiciness blooms from there. And the final romance book that I have to show you guys is The Sweetest Remedy by Jane Igaro. This story starts off with our main character Hannah traveling to Nigeria to attend her father's funeral and to meet his family for the first time. She was raised in the US by her mother. Her father was never really a part of her life. And when he dies, his family invites Hannah to go to the funeral, but also to meet them and stay with them and get to know more about her father and more about their family. And Hannah is really conflicted about this because not only is this trip to Nigeria bringing up a lot of mixed emotions about her father, their connection, their lack of a relationship, and also questions of identity of who she really is and how she really fit into her father's life. But also, once she arrives, she realizes that her father was living this very prestigious, well-respected, wealthy, elaborate lifestyle in Nigeria, and that really conflicts with parts of how she viewed him, and she's trying to have to reconcile her preconceptions with the reality of what she's now facing. And along the way, she meets our male main character who helps her through this journey of figuring out who she is and who her father was. Next, I have some YA contemporaries. First is Salam with Love by Sarah Sharaf Beg. This is a bit complicated to explain. It is definitely more of a YA contemporary halal romance, but there's also a lot of things going on in this story. I actually ended up already DNFing this one. You can check my April wrap up to hear my full thoughts on this, but I will just say that it's very hard to describe because I don't really understand what exactly this book was trying to do. I don't think the synopsis provides a good summary of what exactly is going on in this story. Next, I have You Bring the Distant Near by Mitali Perkins. This is a story that follows 5 women over 3 generations in this Bengali American family as they immigrate to the US and then have to negotiate their kind of cultural values and who they really see themselves as. Next, I have what might be my favorite cover of the summer, and that is Cafe Con Lychee by Emery Lee. This is such a cool cover. Like, it just gives me all the summer treats vibes. This is a YA enemies to lovers romance. We follow our main character, Theo, who his family is Asian American, and they are running a struggling cafe in this very small town. Meanwhile, our other main character, Gabi, he is Puerto Rican, and his family is running a bakery that is also struggling. So these two rivals come together and end up trying to sell their family's baked goods and treats at school in order to try and help their family's struggling businesses. And the final book in this group is actually more of a YA historical fiction. I just didn't have other books that went in with that, so I lumped it in with contemporaries, and that is This Rebel Heart by Catherine Locke. This is, like I said, a historical fiction that follows our 18-year-old main character, Chila, who is living in Hungary during the communist regime, and her parents were executed by the regime and then have recently been exonerated. She's unsure why, and so she's trying to better understand what exactly is going on with the government, while simultaneously there is this tension building up in Budapest as people are becoming more and more dissatisfied with the communist regime, and a potential revolution is at the forefront of this story. And I've actually already read this one. This was the May pick for an in real life young adult book club that I'm a part of. Once I film and upload my May wrap up, you can watch that to hear my further thoughts on this. Next, I have a bit of a blend of YA and adult thriller, mystery, and horror books. To start off, I have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is a YA murder mystery. So 5 years before the events in this story, a young man murdered his high school girlfriend, and the town was left in absolute shock over what happened. Now, at the beginning of this story, which takes place 5 years after the murder, our main character, Pip, decides that she's going to re-examine this case for a final project for one of her classes. And she starts to realize that maybe the boyfriend wasn't the one who committed the murder, and that has far-reaching implications. I know this is the first in this YA trilogy. I've heard very good things about it, and it's very much giving me true crime podcast vibes, so I'm hoping that I will enjoy this. Next, I have Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. I don't know a ton about this, except that it is, I believe, a group of people that are hunting KKK members, which just sounds absolutely amazing. Next, I have Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is a thriller that follows these two fathers who were both formerly incarcerated. Their sons were married to one another and are killed in this brutal murder that the fathers believe are a hate crime, and the fathers decide that they are going to team up and track down whoever killed their sons and bring about their own justice. So this not only brings these fathers together in their journey of grief, their shared experiences of being imprisoned, having difficult relationships with their children, but also forces them to examine the relationships with their sons. I believe one of the fathers was not exactly so accepting of his son coming out as either gay or queer. And so this story kind of examines what this trip means for these fathers. And the final book in this group is The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. This is a thriller that I believe also has some supernatural or horror elements involved. This starts out as the story of a young woman named Vivian in the 1980s who is desperate for work and money. And so she agrees to work at this motel. And shortly after she gets this job, she goes missing. Decades later, Vivian's niece comes to the motel searching for answers as to what happened. And she finds that something is happening at this motel, and it might be darker than she had ever imagined. Next, I have a few graphic novels, the first of which is When Stars Are Scattered by Omar Mohammed. This is a graphic memoir that is about Omar Mohammed's time growing up in a Kenyan refugee camp and his experience being offered this opportunity to receive an education that changed the course of his life. Next, I have The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen. I don't know a ton about this except that I believe the main character is using Vietnamese fairy tales to try to get his parents to understand that he is queer because his parents do not speak English and he doesn't really have the right vocabulary to explain himself in Vietnamese. So he uses these stories to kind of bridge this gap between him and his parents. And the final graphic novel that I have to show you guys is Thunderous by M.L. Smoker and Natalie Petersey with art by Dale DeForest. This is the story of a young girl named Diana who is a member of the Lakota Nation, and she doesn't really care to identify herself as Indigenous and is kind of over having to listen to all of these stories and all of this information about her people until one day she is transported to this magical world that is straight out of one of the stories that her tribe has always told, and she has to embrace her Lakota heritage in order to get back home to her family. And I'm gonna show, this has like a map of the different Lakota territories, and then it also in the back has oh, there's a poster that I'll show in a minute, but it also has a like discussion about the Indigenous language used by the Lakota people, and then it has like a glossary of some terms and words used, which I think is amazing. And here is the poster that was included because this edition is actually the Independent Bookstore Day edition. So I ended up getting this at one of my local bookstores for Indie Bookstore Day. Next, I have some short story collections and poetry collections that I'm just gonna go over together as one group. First, I have Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century by Kim Fu. Again, another really cool cover. There was a story in this that someone on Bookstagram had posted a like highlight of, and the first line had my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to pick up this story. I believe it has some magical realism or fantasy elements, which is intriguing to me because I've mainly only read literary short story collections, so might be branching into something new here. Next, I have Language of the Geckos and Other Stories by Gary Pack. This is a cool cover. It's almost like a watercolor, and Gary Pack is a Asian Hawaiian author, and this is a collection of short stories about Asian Hawaiians. I don't know if I've actually read any Hawaiian literature before, so this is definitely more of a starting point for me of just starting to read Hawaiian authors. Next, I have How to Love a Jamaican by Alexis Arthurs. This is a short story collection that focuses on Jamaican and Jamaican American people, and I actually first heard about this book from Book of Sins. She said that this is like her favorite book to reread because she always feels like there's something more that she takes away from it every time. And I haven't read a ton of Caribbean literature outside of like the Dominican Republic and Haiti. So I'm trying to expand the scope of Caribbean stories that I'm reading. And now the rest of these are all poetry collections. I have two collections by the same poet. The first is When My Brother Was an Aztec, and the second is Post-Colonial Love Poem. These are both by the Indigenous poet Natalie Diaz, and When My Brother Was an Aztec is actually Natalie Diaz's first collection. It's an examination of her brother's addiction to drugs and also a kind of more broader examination of addiction and substance abuse within Indigenous communities. And Post-Colonial Love Poem is more of a look at post-colonial identities within Indigenous communities. I've heard amazing things about this poet, and I've wanted to read both of these collections for quite a while now, so I'm so glad to have picked them both up finally. Next, I have Call Us What We Carry by Amanda Gorman, and I actually found this like brand new hardcover edition in a used bookstore, and I didn't notice when I first got it that there is like pen ink there, and then after I brought it home, I opened it up. Someone's grandmother bought them this book for Christmas of 2021, and they donated it when there was like a personal message inscribed. So yeah, Lila, I am now your grandmother's new granddaughter because how dare you? And the final poetry collection I have to show you is Calling a Wolf by Kava Akbar. And I've actually read a few of the poems in this before, which is what made me want to get this collection because I've really enjoyed this poet's poetry. And the final stack of books that I have to show you guys are my fantasy and speculative fiction books. So first I have Elazzo by Darcy Little Badger with art by Rovina Kai. This is a speculative fiction that is set in this alternate United States where the creatures, animals, and other aspects of indigenous mythology and belief systems exist among humans in this world. And our main character has a family member that is murdered, and our main character decides that they are going to try to solve this murder and try to figure out if the thing that murdered their family member was human or one of these mythical monsters that walk among them. Next, I have The Ivory Key by Akshaya Rahman. This is the first in what I believe is going to be a fantasy duology that follows this group of siblings that are brought back together in order to save their kingdom. And this is actually the Illumicrate edition, which has the blue sprayed edges. It has a like inscription from the author, and it also came with a book plate. I actually got this on Pango Books. This was actually listed before it was released in the US, and Elisa from Of Madness and Magic, she had just posted a review of this whenever I saw it on Pango Books, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna order it. I didn't realize the US hardcover was so gorgeous. So this might be one where if I enjoy this, I might also be purchasing that US hardcover, because I'll insert a picture here. That is stunning. Also, it's textured. I saw it in the bookstore recently and I almost cried. Then I have City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the first in a trilogy that is set in a fantastical version of Cairo, where there are jinn and spirits that live among the people. And I've heard great things about this series. I actually prefer the UK covers, which is what this one is. I love like the blue that they add in there, and then the spines. Oh my god, gorgeous. Here's the back. So I ordered this first one in the UK cover because I would like to try to read this sometime in like late summer, early fall. Next, I have The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This is the first book in a new fantasy trilogy that follows these 4 people who are brought together to track down this lamp that has magic in it that the Sultan wants because he believes that it will revive this barren land. However, the jinn that live in this land might be sacrificed in exchange for getting the land to prosper again. And this was one of my most anticipated new releases for 2022. And also this one was a book pick for, I believe, August for Of Madness and Magic's Fantasy for a Cause book club. So another reason to pick it up. And the final book of this book haul is the one that is arguably the most gorgeous, and that is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. Can we take a minute? This is the UK cover. And I don't necessarily think that the US cover is ugly, but I love the blues and purples in this. I just think it's gorgeous. And this is actually a retelling of a Korean folk story about a girl who sacrifices herself to the sea god in order to save the woman that her brother is in love with, and to also find out why the sea god is no longer helping her people. And a mystery kind of unfolds from there. And I actually already read this as a buddy read for May. Once I film and upload my May wrap up, you can check there for my further thoughts on this. But I read a library copy of it, so I just wanted a finished copy for my shelves. So those are all the books that I've accumulated over the first half of 2022. Like I said, there were a lot of books to go over. If you have read any of these books and enjoyed them and think that I should prioritize reading them as soon as possible, please let me know in the comments down below. I love to hear your thoughts on these. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading. Bye!